the New World Order in a nutshell in 5 minutes. The New World Order can be summarised, it can be summarised in about 5 minutes. Basically, you've got people like John Kerry, who was a senator before he became Secretary of State. This man has more than $50 million invested in arms companies. These are companies that are making weapons and missiles and all of the paraphernalia to do with making war. And we know that he's got at least $50 million invested of his own money, because when you're a senator, and also when you join the Congress as well, you have to declare your investments and declare your interests. I mean, there are some congressmen and there's some senators with $450 million of their personal wealth invested in various corporations. A lot of it is arms companies. So how do the shares go up in value? How does John Kerry increase his personal fortune? Well, obviously he has to create war, and there is a brotherhood of war, and I'm not making this up. There is a real brotherhood of war, and they've been going since the early 1800s, since about 1832, and they are called Chapter 322, Skull and Bones, and they actually call themselves the Order. And George W. Bush, John Kerry, and George W. Bush's father have been members, and John Kerry and George W. Bush have been members since the 1960s, and this is a real life situation. They call themselves the Order, and they have German mottos. Their brotherhood, which is actually has headquarters at Yale University. Its mottos and its emblems and the way it organises this brotherhood is based on fraternities amongst German students in Germany in the 1800s. And it is for the elite families, and they take on about 15 members every single year. And John Kerry was a member, and he is a member, and he's called a patriarch because he's a senior member, and so is George W. Bush. By the way, some researcher, I can't remember their name now, I know that's unprofessional of me, but they said that John Kerry was the cousin or a distant cousin of the Bush family. So the Bush family still are having influence on the White House today. Now, coming back to the New World Order. The New World Order, in a nutshell, is about money. It's about driving up the value of those shares in those arms companies, and it's about also driving up the value of gold as well. This is a very, very important aspect to it, because when there's a rumour of war, then the gold value goes up. Now, gold is taxed, and this is why I've never got involved in the gold business. I mean, I appear on television and radio stations where they've got gold commercials. Even the owners of some of these stations are dealing in gold. I have to say that the bullion market is controlled by the royal political elite. And when we look at Yale, and we look at the Ivy League, and we look at Skull and Bones, we can clearly see we are dealing with the American aristocracy. They get, I think, $15,000 when they join Skull and Bones, and a grandfather clock, which is set 5 minutes in advance, so that they always get to meetings early, which I think is a good thing. This is what I do as well. So John Kerry is a warmongerer, and the reason that we have that term in modern day parlance is because there really are people who go round creating wars for profit. Another good example would be the Thatcher family. Dennis Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady, rest in peace, thank God she's dead now, and her son. And they're involved in arms as well, or they were. They were running an arms kind of soiree, inviting people to number 10 Downing Street at the taxpayer's expense, and doing arms deals at number 10 Downing Street. And Margaret Thatcher's son was earning commission on those deals. This is all documented, by the way. And some of those arms were actually sold to people like Saddam Hussein. You know, the French, I think it was the brother of Jacques Chirac, the former president of France. I'm pretty sure that his brother was involved in sales of Exocet missiles, you know, to Chile and Argentina and other countries. Some of those Exocet missiles ended up being fired back at us, the British. So that's the arms trade for you, and it's a big part of the New World Order. And I'm making a film about John Lennon at the moment. He said that there were two industries in the world. There was the war industry, with all the guns and the bullets and the missiles. By the way, some of these missiles cost more than $1 million each. And then there's the peace industry, which is us, you know. And yeah, there is definitely very, very corrupt factions within government. I would say I would put Tony Blair into this category as well. And I would say that yes, Tony Blair, actually he was down in Saint-Tropez not long ago, and he was actually speaking to various people, and some of those people have investments in arms companies. You know, when you create a regional war, like say for example what we saw happen with Bosnia, and you own a huge number of shares in a company that makes tanks and guns and missiles and this kind of thing, those share values go up. It's as simple as that. And that is the New World Order, you know, and it's always been like that. Now, when we look at the real people who are really in charge, we have to look at the European House of Saxe, Coburg and Gotha. People don't know, you know, they don't know that name at all. That's because they call themselves the Windsors. And the House of Saxe, Coburg, Gotha controls many thrones throughout the planet. Many. They control the old royal family of Bulgaria, for example. Their cousins control the Netherlands. Their old cousins are the Romanovs, who control what you call White Russia, which is the central part of Russia that's around Moscow, Central Eastern Russia. So the Saxe-Coburgs are, you know, they are basically in control, and Buckingham Palace is an enormous business, and they call it the firm. And there was an estimate in a BBC documentary that was broadcast about 20 years ago, saying that there was 30,000 people involved in indirect and direct employment of Buckingham Palace. I mean, the Queen's head is on all the money. It doesn't matter whether it's the King or the Queen at the time. We're dealing with an enormous corporation here. Buckingham Palace runs the show. Buckingham Palace runs the show, and they've always controlled the bullion business. They've always controlled the diamonds business. They've always controlled oil as well. This is a very, very important thing. The Crown Estates own many of the properties where there's huge amounts of fossil fuels. They own 55% of the foreshore of Great Britain. Okay, so that's more than half of all the beaches. And of course, what do you find when you go for a walk on a British beach? You find nuclear power stations on some of those beaches. And that's because the royal family also are involved in mining for uranium as well. And they're involved in, you know, basically all of the big businesses that matter in terms of warfare. Now, what do we see the royals doing? We see them dressed in military uniforms. We see Prince Harry flying his Apache helicopter in Afghanistan. We see them being the mascots and the patrons of all these squadrons and battalions. And it is a militarized monarchy. And this is really at the heart of the New World Order. And, you know, the British Empire is still alive and well. Just because some of these countries like India, for example, have declared their independence, it really doesn't mean that India is totally out of the control of Buckingham Palace. I mean, what happens with elections is that you can have as many democratic elections in a country as you want. But there is this hierarchy of civil servants who never change. You can have one prime minister change after another, after another, after another, but the Sir Peters and the Sir Pauls and all the private secretaries who are basically running the apparatus of government and have their hands on the control of the treasury, which is where all the money and the taxes are, they don't change, and they always swear allegiance to Buckingham Palace. So really, basically, in a nutshell, that's my view of what we call the New World Order.